Dear students, welcome to online class. In the last session, we were learning about the author and the introduction to the short story The Last Leaf. Today's class will continue with the actual story of The Last Leaf, which is written by O. Henry. Before we go on to the story, let us understand the background to the story. The background of the story is pneumonia pandemic. The story is set in early 1900s. It is set in Greenwich Village of New York City, and importantly, pneumonia is characterized as a strange visitor to the neighborhood of Greenwich Village. Let us continue. In a little district west of Washington Square, the streets have run crazy. So, this story is set in a little district west of Washington Square. I mean, this is in New York City. So, it is set there in a little district which is west of Washington Square. Washington Square is a square usually any city will have, or a circle like. So in this place, streets have run crazy. So the streets are not in, very straight and neatly laid. They are very short and narrow and curves here and there and having triangles, broken themselves into small strips called places. So they are called as places, small strips. Here, it is not a very long, street. It takes the diversion immediately one into another, or at sometimes one street leading to two diversions. In such a way these places are. These places make strange angles and curves. One street crosses a time or two, so one street ends up in two small streets leading to. So the real difficulty is for the artists who come to this place. So Washington Square, I mean, in this little district of Greenwich Village, artists used to come. So they found it really difficult to travel in these places. An artist once discovered a valuable possibility in this street. Suppose a collector with a bill for paints, paper, and canvas should. So, if a collector for the bill for which he had lent paints, paper, or canvas, if he comes in traveling in these streets, in traversing this route, suddenly meet himself coming back without a cent having been paid on account. So he will not have the knowledge in which street actually he had traveled. So in such a way, these streets are really, confusing, and then they make a person directionless. So, to quaint old Greenwich Village, the art people soon came prowling. So, to this street, to these streets, the place with this kind of street, this is what Greenwich Village, art people came prowling. They eagerly came to, to continue with their art, hunting for north windows and 18th century gables and Dutch attics and low rents. So they were searching for 18th century gables. Gables means a roof having a triangular shape. Dutch attics, which is a very unique hut of known as Dutch attic, and having these features, north windows, 18th century triangular shaped roofs, roof windows, and Dutch attics, and also with row low rents. Then they imported some PVT mugs and a chafing dish or two from 6th Avenue and become a colony. So later on they get they buy mugs made of tin and lead. That's what PVT mugs and a chafing dish, which is I would say uh, some kind of a home appliance which keeps the food very hot. So that's what a chafing dish or two from 6th Avenue. I mean, they would buy all this from 6th Avenue. This is one of the street name in this Greenwich. I mean, in the New York City, and became a colony. So they settled in the Greenwich village. I mean, these artists come there and then they buy all their requirements and then settle in the Greenwich village, and then that way it becomes a colony where a place of living. At the top of a squatty three-story brick house, and Jhansi at the top of a squatty three-story brick, Sue and Jhansi had their studio. So we are introduced to two characters, Sue and Jhansi. So they had a studio. Jhansi was familiar for Joanna. So Jhansi was known for Joanna, and one was from Maine, the other from these two artists have come from one from Maine and one other from California. So they met at the Table d'Hôte, 8th Street, Delmonico's, and found their taste in art, chicory, salad, and bishop's leaves. So they had met in a hotel by name Delmonico's, and they found their tastes are similar. I mean, their tastes are same, and even with eatables and even with the wearables, the bishop's leaves. Chicory salad is a eatable item. Even in art, as both of them are artists of painting or drawing, so they found their interests similar, and their would say their attire similar, and would say a studio resulted with I mean, as they come together, as their interests became same. So all this had happened in May. In November, a cold, unseen stranger whom the doctors called pneumonia. So all this had, I mean, these artists came there and settled in May, and in the month of November, what happened? Unseen stranger whom the doctors called pneumonia. So when an unseen stranger, when who had the disease pneumonia, had walked in these streets of Greenwich village, talked about when he went through this village, when this colony of where the artists were living, touching one here and there with his icy fingers. Now, these streets are very narrow, and I mean, this disease. So here the disease is personified in a character. We have to understand how widespread was the disease pneumonia. I mean, how it has spread as a pandemic in early 1900s. This is how, I mean, touching one here and there with his icy fingers, or on the east side, this ravager. So, I mean, in such a way, this pneumonia had attacked the people over the east side of this street. This ravager strode, strode boldly. I mean, walked with long steps, smiting. I mean, hurting here and there, smiting. People in these narrow streets. more in number, and he walked slowly where these crazy streets were there, because it confused him. The way he has to follow, so that way he could not, from one place, I mean one street to the another. Uh, so, however, those streets are, he trod slowly through the maze of the narrow and moss grown places. Narrow and moss grown. They are very narrow, and moss grown means where very, confused, you know, ways those are. You may not know to which street you are actually, going to, or to which street your way leads to. Mr. Pneumonia was not what you would call a chivalric old gentleman. So this man, Mr. Pneumonia, is not a person who is with a very gentle behavior, or who has a good heart. A mite of a little woman with blood thinned by California Jeffords. So here we see a young child, a mite of a mite means a young child of a little woman who is of a young aged girl with blood thinned by, means she's very weak and then thin. Uh, she was blood thinned by California Jaffies. Jaffies means the breeze. I mean, with the atmosphere or with the environment of California. That's how she has grown. I mean, she has grown thin. Was hardly the fair game for the red-fisted. So she became the target for this Mr. Pneumonia. Red-fisted, short-breathed old duffer. So he is a red-fisted, old man, and short-breathed. Short-breathed means, so as he was suffering from pneumonia, so he is taking short breath. But Jhansi he smote, so he hurt Jhansi, and she lay scarcely moving. So this little woman is Jhansi, and she was hurt, and she was taken to Rouse. She lay scarcely moving on her painted iron bedstead, so she did not move. So she was attacked with pneumonia. I mean, she could not, she could not breathe, and then she's attacked with that. So she's not as active as she was before. She lay scarcely moving on her painted iron bedstead, looking through the small Dutch window panes. So when she was laying on a bed, she was looking through the Dutch window panes. So we have seen the one of the features of these houses that they stay is Dutch attics. So Dutch window, through the window, she could see she was seeing at the blank side of the next brick house. There was a blank side of the brick house. After 20 feet, she was intently looking at that. One morning, the busy doctor invited Sue into the hallway. So now the only friend, Joanna or Jhansi has is Sue. So she has to take care of her friend. One morning, the busy doctor, the doctor had come and he had invited Sue to find out the actual health condition of Joanna or Jhansi. She has one chance in, let us say, 10. This is how the doctor gave his opinion, that she has one chance in, let us say, 10. If there are if there are, I would say, if her life is compared, out of 10 chances she has only one, he said as he shook down the thermometer in his clinical, as it shook down the mercury in his clinical thermometer. By looking into the thermometer, so he had predicted this, and that and that chance is for her to want to live. If at all she wants to live, then she can live, or else she cannot. Live, it is for she has to decide, she has to be hopeful of living. This way people have of lining on you on the side of the undertaker makes the entire pharmacopoeia look silly. So now, oh, so is really worried. Entire pharmacopoeia, entire medicine, the world of medicine is in front of you, but the girl, I mean, but the person is not willing to live. So all this will be a kind of a silly with a person who has made a mind to die. Your little lady has made up her mind that she is not going to get well. Has she anything on her mind? This is how the doctor asked. So, your little lady, your little friend had made up her mind that she is not going to, live. I mean, she is not going to get well. The doctor asked, I mean, is there anything that she is interested in? And she wanted to pay in the Bay of Naples someday, said Sue. So this is Sue replied saying, no, she had told me that she wanted to pay the Bay of Naples. Paint, bosh. Has she anything on her mind worth thinking twice? A man, for instance. No, I'm not asking about paint. I mean, anything worth thinking. It's not that foolish painting, and I'm asking anything about worth thinking twice. A man, for instance, that's what the doctor asked. Man, has she got any man or any friend, any boyfriend? A man, said Sue with a Jewish harp twang in her voice. I mean, she was surprised. What is this? That's what Jewish sharp twang in her voice. This man, that's how that lyre or that music, I mean, that voice of Sue is. Is man words but no doctor? There is nothing of the kind. So Sue replied, is a man worth but no doctor? Well, it is the weakness then, said the doctor. So, if she has no boyfriend or no man, then it is just a weakness, said the doctor. I will do all that science so far as it may filter through my efforts. So, with whatever medicine I can do, I'll do. Whatever treatment I can offer, I'll offer, can accomplish. But whenever my patient begins to count the carriages in her funeral procession, I subtract 50% from the curative power of medicine. But you need to assure me that she'll not think negatively, she'll not think of dying, I mean, she'll not think of not getting well if she counts carriages in her funeral procession. Here it means always thinking about death and dying. It's what funeral carriages. So I cannot assure you 50% of her life. I mean 50%, I cannot give you 50% guarantee. Another 50% I can assure. If you will get her to ask one question about the new winter styles in clock sleeves, I will promise you a 1 in 5 chance for her instead of 1 in 10. So what the doctor offers, if you could ask her about her, her about the things that she likes or about the things that she is interested in, and talk to her, for some time and then make her mind free. So there are more chances of her getting well, maybe 1 in 5 chances. That's what the doctor assures. Continue. After the doctor had gone, Sue went into the workroom. So after doctor having suggested all that, she went to her workroom. Her workroom is what, the drawing room, and cried a napkin to a pulp. So she cried, I mean she wept. That's what cried. Japanese napkin to a pulp means she cried so that, the cloth became wet. With the tears, the cloth became wet. Then she swaggered into Johnson's room with her drawing board whistling ragtime. So she moved. Swagger means very confidently she walked into Johnson's room with a drawing board. She took a drawing board. As the doctor suggested, she don't want to leave Johnsy alone. And whistling ragtime, a kind of a live music. When we are, would say, very free and then lively, we often sing. No, we often tend to sing some tune. So she was uh, having some tune in her mouth. She went into Jhansi's room. Jhansi lay scarcely, making a ripple under the bedclothes. So, she was laying on the bed, covered with the covered herself with bedcloths, with her face toward the window. So her face is toward the window, facing. She's seeing through the window, as we have seen through the Dutch windows. So stopped whistling, thinking she was asleep. Not to disturb her, she stopped her tune, and which she was, making lively, or with her pleasant ways. She arranged her board and began a pen and ink drawing to illustrate a magazine story. So, she doesn't want to disturb Jhansi. She started with her work. Now she has come there, and when she has come there to start her work, no, her drawing work. So the task that she was going to do, a pen and ink drawing to illustrate a magazine story. She wants to have a picture for a magazine story. Young artists must pave their way to art by drawing pictures for magazine stories that young authors write to pay their way to literature. So to start with, young artists will actually start with the pictures for magazine stories. Like young authors pay their way, say that young authors write to pay their way to literature. So similarly, as young authors write small stories or poems, similarly young artists have to write draw pictures for magazine stories. Then they'll accomplish, and then they'll become good painters. As Sue was sketching a pair of elegant horseshoe riding trousers, Sue was drawing. She was sketching a pair of elegant horse show riding trousers. So she was drawing horse show riding trousers. She was drawing that, and a monocle of the figure of the hero. Monocle here, the eyeglass of this hero, an Idaho cowboy. So this hero is an Idaho cowboy. She heard a low sound several times repeated. So when she was drawing this, she heard a low sound, very low sound, several times repeated. She went quickly to the bedside. She was in Jhansi's room. So was in Jhansi's room. She went immediately to the bedside. Jhansi's eyes were open wide. She was looking out the window and counting backward. So she observed what actually is happening with Jhansi. So when she went there, she understood Jhansi was counting, and then she was counting backward. This is what the sound that she had heard. 12, she said, and little later 11, and then 10, and 9, and then 8, and 7, almost together. So say 8 and 7 almost together. So she's counting something backward. solicitously out of the window. So very caringly and very worriedly she looked through the window what actually Jhansi was counting. What was there to count? When she worried, there was only a bare dreary yard to be seen, very dried area or yard there. It can be seen the blank side of the brick house 20 feet away. So it was a blank, I mean, there was nothing, blank side of the brick house 20 feet away from their building, I mean, their room. An old EV vine gnarled and decayed at the roots. So there was only this creeper, EV creeper, uh, which was very old, and it was having many twists and turns in between the branches and the roots, and decayed, and it had the decayed roots climbed halfway up the brick wall. So it had climbed halfway. I mean, it was not fully. It had not climbed fully on top of the wall. So it was halfway to the wall. The cold breath of autumn had stricken its leaves from the vine until its skeleton branches clung, almost bare to the crumbling bricks. So what has happened? The cold breath. I mean, the cold breath of autumn season. So autumn season, now the season that we are, which is going to approach, or with some trees we see the leaves falling, or within, I mean, another 20-30 days we'll have. This another 20-30 days, or before spring season is what the autumn season. So all these leaves have fallen. Yeah, it is just a skeleton of the branch that could be seen, and almost this blank side of the brick house. That brick house, how is that brick house? It is just, I mean, these bricks are crumbled. I mean, the brick house is almost going to fall. In such a way, it is. What is it, dear? Asked Sue. Sue, who could not, uh, control her worriness, he asked, "What is that you are seeing or you are counting?" "Six," said Jansi in almost a whisper. So, in whisper, Jansi said, "Six. They're falling faster now. 3 days ago, there were almost 100. So, 3 days ago, there were 100 leaves. It made my head ache to count them. So, we come to know Jhansi had counted 100. From 100 she has counted. It made my head ache to count them, but now it's easy. There goes another one. There are only 5 left now. So one more goes. Now there are only 5. 5 what, dear? Tell your Sudi. Sue is asking Jhansi, why? I mean, what is 5? What are you counting? You please tell me. Tell your Sudi. This is a very dear name that Jhansi calls Sue as Sudi. Leaves. They are leaves. 5. I mean, I've counted till now. They are leaves on the ivy vine. When the last one falls, I must go too. I have known that for 3 days. Did the doctor tell you? So it is a kind of a revelation too. I mean, it is a kind of a shock to Sue that the Jhansi was counting these leaves for the past 3 days, and she had started from 100. Did the doctor tell you? Oh, I never heard of such nonsense, complained Sue. What nonsense is that? Can somebody count the leaves and then think that if every leaf falls, they'll die? With magnificent scorn, she could not, understand how this could happen. She could not accept. With magnificent scorn, she said, "What have old ivy leaves to do with your getting well? And you, I mean, how can you relate yourself or your life with the EV leaves falling down. So, you naughty girl, don't be a goosey. So, and see, and you used to love that wine so. I mean, you used to love that, EV creeper tree. And how come, don't be a foolish to relate your life. Why the doctor told me this morning, why the doctor told me this morning that your chances for getting well real soon were. So the doctor was telling that you are going to get well. Let us see exactly what he said. He said the chances were 10 to 1. So out of 10 chances, you have one chance of living. Why? That is almost a as good a chance as we have in New York when we ride on the streetcars or walk past a new building. So this is the same chances of living as we travel in New York City or when we pass through the new building. It is the same danger that we have. It is not an extreme danger that you are facing. Out of 10 chances, you have one chance of living. Try to take some broth now. Try to take some broth now. I mean, a soup made of vegetables or cereals or corns. This is what Sue suggests, John C. Try to take some broth now and let Sudi go back to her drawing so she can sell the editor man with it. And allow me to draw the picture, and I have to sell this magazine illustration to the editor and buy port wine for a sick child. And then I have to buy some port wine, I mean, say very sweet wine for my friend John C. and pork chops for myself. So I need to buy some pork chops for myself. Yeah, don't worry about this too much about the falling leaf. Say, take some soup. I'll be back. That's what Sue told to, Sue suggested to John C. You need not get any more wine, said John C. John C. was not interested. We see she was very negative. She is very pessimistic about life. Said John C., keeping her eyes fixed out the window. When she is intently looking through the window and she is telling, you need not get anything to me. There goes another. No, I don't want any broth. When she's just intently looking through the window and then one more leaf has fallen. There goes another. No, I don't want any broth. That leaves just four. Okay, there are only just four leaves now. I want to see the last one fall before it gets dark. Then I'll go to. So before it's dark, I need to see the last leaf fall. Don't disturb. I don't want to take. I'm not interested to take anything. Then I'll also go to. Sue is really worried and then concerned. How come Jhansi had turned all the most like this? Jhansi dear, said Sue, bending over her, will you promise me to keep your eyes closed and not look out the window until I am done working? Now Jhansi has to do something, so she has taken the promise from Jhansi saying that not to look through the window until she finishes her drawing. I must hand those drawings in by tomorrow. So by tomorrow I should hand these drawings. So don't look through the window and then allow me to draw my picture. I need the light or I would draw the shade down. So I also need the light. I cannot turn off the light or else I would draw the shade down. The shade will not come properly. Couldn't you draw in the other room? Asked Jhansi coldly. So, why are you drawing in my room? Can't you draw in the other room? Asked Jhansi coldly. Coldly means, somewhat, unhappily. She could not tolerate the presence of Sue. Here by you said so. Beside, I don't want you to keep looking at those silly evil leaves. So I would rather be. I mean, I'm not interested to go to the other room. And besides, I want to be with you, and then see to that you don't look through the window at those evil leaves, those falling evil leaves. Tell me as soon as you have finished, said Jansi. So Jansi said, as soon as you have finished, tell me that I need to see the last leaf falling down. Closing her eyes and lying white and still as fallen statue. Lying white and still as fallen statue. Very, adamant, very cold, very unhappy because I want to see that last one fall. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of thinking. I want to turn loose my hold on everything and go sailing down, down, just like one of those poor tired lays. So, I don't have any patience to wait. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of thinking, and I don't have any hold on my life. I want to be just like those leaves which are falling down loosely, uh, and I cannot think of living. I'm fed up of living. That's what uh, Jhansi tells her plight. Try to sleep, said so. I must call Baharman up to be my model for the old hermit miner. I'll not be gone a minute. Don't try to move until I come back. So, would say ask Jansi to calm herself and sleep, and she has to call old Baharman to be the model of her hermit miner. That she is going to draw an illustration. Within a minute, I'll be back. Don't look back at that until I come. I mean, no, she tells you don't try to move until I come back. Don't try to move. Don't try to look through the window. Now we'll come to know about old Baharman. So we have understood there were two characters till now. It is Jhansi and Joanna. These two are friends. And we have the doctor, and the next one is old Baharman. Old Baharman was a painter who lived on the ground floor beneath them. So, this painter, old Baharman, he was a painter, he lived on the ground floor beneath them. These artists have lived in at the top of the three-story building, but old Baharman is living in ground floor. He was past 60 and had a Michelangelo's Moses beard curling down from the head of a satyr along with the body of an imp. So he has a very long beard. They are compared to Michelangelo's Moses. Michelangelo was a painter, and then he had a painting done of Moses. So Michelangelo's Moses. From the head of a satyr along with the body of an imp. So these would say head of a satyr along with the body of the imp. Here satyr means having uh, uh, a male nature spirit with ears and tail. Having ears and tail, that's what like horse. Like horse, in such a way is his appearance. A long beard and then having the ears of a horse or tail, horse and tail, along with the body of an imp. So his appearance is kind of a imp or some kind of a spirit. Baharman was a failure in art. Baharman was a failure in art. So he was a person who did not succeed in painting. 40 years he had wielded the brush without getting near enough to touch the hem of his mistress' robe. So 40 years, since 40 years he had tried with the hold of the brush without getting, when he could not paint the hem of his mistress's robe. The hem means that end of the jacket. That's what hem means. Could not paint that. He had been always about to paint a masterpiece. But his aim is to paint what? A masterpiece. But had never yet begun it. He had not yet begun it. For several years, he had painted nothing except now and then a daub in the line of commerce and advertising. So, for several years now, he had only tried to paint some kind of lines or some kind of drawing for commerce and advertising. That's what he had done all these days. So, he had been always about to paint a masterpiece. We understand that he wanted to paint. His intention is to paint a masterpiece, but he had never begun it. And he earned a little by serving as a model to those young artists. So he earned a little by serving as a model to the young artists who could not pay the price of. He drank gin to excess and still talked of his coming masterpiece. So he had. So here is a person who drinks a lot, and then he poses himself as a model and he earns some money. So he drank gin. So when he used to drink, so here gin means it's a colorless alcohol. So he used to drink gin to his extent, still talked of his coming masterpiece. Even in his in his in his state of when he was drunk, he still talks about his masterpiece that he has to paint. For the rest, he was a fierce little old man. For the rest, he was a fierce little old man who scoffed terribly at softness in anyone. So is a terrible little old man who has very arrogant behavior, and then who will not show any kindness to anybody, who scoffed terribly at the softness in anyone. So he really criticized the soft nature of the people, and who regarded himself as a special master in waiting to protect, and he regarded himself as a uh, as a as a as a god. That's what, as a special master in waiting. Here a special master means like a dog which protects the house is actually guarding the two artists who are there in the three-story building, on the top of the three-story building, to protect the two young artists in the studio above. So found Baharman smelling strongly of juniper berries in his dimly lighted den below. So she found that he has drunk excess of gin. That's what, made of juniper berries. Dimly, in his dimly lighted den, in a in his house. That's what den here. He looks like a beast, so the beast lives in a den. In that way, it is used as den. In one corner was a blank canvas and an easel. So in one corner there was a black canvas. Canvas is the supporting cloth for drawing to be drawn, and an easel that had been waiting there for 25 years. So there was this, on the frame, uh, which he had wanted to draw. A blank canvas was waiting on an easel and a frame, this frame was waiting for Berman to be drawn from since how many years? Since 25 years. He has not drawn anything, only to receive the first line of the masterpiece. She told him of Jansi's fancy. So Sue told Baharman about Jansi's, fancy with the ivy leaves falling, and how she feared she would indeed light and fragile as a leaf herself float away. And then Sue tells that she is really afraid that Chauncey was very thin and then fragile, very weak, like a ivy leaf itself. When she's worried that and there's some kind of a, what to say, bad, she's not happy about this news of to say Chauncey, and she's worried that something may happen to her. When her slight hold upon the world grows weaker, if she loses her hope of living, and uh, and there is certainly something, bad will happen, and we don't know what will happen to her. That's what Sue was worried. Was, he cried, Baharman, what nonsense is this? He cried. Is there people in the world meet their foolishness to die because leaves they draw off from a confused vine? This is how he began to talk, began to say. Is there people who will, would say, relate their life to foolish leaves? And to the confused, to the dried leaves. I have not heard of such a thing. No, I will not pose as a model for your fool hermit dunderhead. So he is going to pose as a model for an hermit, your fool hermit dunderhead. So he is going to pose as a model for the hermit. Evie, do you allow that silly business to come in their brain of her? Ach, that poor little Miss Yancey. And how could that lady, that girl, allow this silly thing come to her mind? Thank you. In the next part of the session, we'll continue the other half of the lesson.